Good morning, everyone. This is Rafael Hoffman, and today we're going to be discussing a new idea on coral. Coral is empathic. How did I discover this? Well, it's just something that came to my mind recently. An epiphany, a realization. So, basically, many say that coral is actually on a turnaround of stage red because it has to do with self-reliance and therefore dominance. You want to control and be on top of things and be on top of people. In this case, on top of systems. But I think that the other speaker I heard once is beige. Beige is more accurate. It's a turnaround of beige. Because you're really entering into a new world of thinking. So, empathy. The thing about empathy is a product of being submersed in your surroundings, of being submersed on a higher level. So, beige chooses to isolate in the sense that he doesn't let people into his heart. So a lot of beige people who are operating on survival, they're basically, the packs are usually small. They have a very hard time trusting people. And that's one of the reasons why it's very hard for them to transition into higher stages, because the only way to transition is if you develop relationships and community, tribes to transition. And so a stage beige is picking up cues on how to survive. Now come back to coral. He not only is he picking up on cues on how to survive, everything is a cue, and it's all this input that's being taken in that he just says, I have too much input already. I don't want to deal with anyone. So we've been debating back and forth whether or not coral decides to self-isolate. Now I'm concluding that he does. But not only that, but it's not that he self-isolates physically. He self-isolates mentally through conversation. So he will not be involved in conversation with people that think, because if they're higher enough to have thinking skills like Orange, then they'll just absorb their baggage and it'll distract them from being able to see the bigger picture, which is what they're always seeing. So basically they're getting pulled into a world that is like 10 years away from them, or 10 years, but 10 stages, seemingly 10 stages away. And it's just annoying. Especially when you have someone that you know you can't really change directly. You're not going to enhance the consciousness. I think once you get into teal, that's when you have the ability to enhance the consciousness of Orange. But I believe that teal will be more preoccupied on enhancing higher stages than enhancing lower stages directly. Because what teal wants is a sense of interchangeable leadership patterns. A community of leaders as opposed to one leader. And what this means is that if you had an Orange who was involved, really they're focused on money. I can't deal with that long term. Like, okay, money's okay, but it's preferable to have a higher stage. So therefore, I think that flaw is kind of dealt with in teal. But the flaw of isolation, internal isolation, mental isolation, which means that you're not going to appreciate or want to talk to people who are focused on success, business, and stuff like that. And that pattern is consistent with what's been going on in my life. I stopped talking to people who are into business. It's so like myopic. And I have a friend who recently tried reaching out after I messaged him, and he is like 80% Orange, but very healthy Orange, and a nice 20 to 25% green, and therefore probably 75% Orange. But he's entering into green, but most of him is still in Orange. And he actually had a fallout in a relationship because what's going on here is he's entering into green. So he is putting less emphasis on success, a little bit, and his wife is pushing him. And his wife is in blue, and Orange doesn't care about blue. So blue is saying to Orange, you got to take me more seriously, because that's part of the religious. It's about a religious doctrine of responsibility. I don't know much what happened in his life, but I have a sense based on the way I'm coral. You can just use that throughout that. But that's my understanding. She was upset at him for not focusing on her, which had to do with needs related to an understanding of what that community is supposed to do. And so she's on defense, because shouldn't she pursue a business herself? So she is like in blue entering into orange. He was in orange starting to enter into green. That's why the relationship is falling apart. But anyways, he contacted me and I didn't feel an urgent need to respond because it's not my value system. We're still too different. Even though he's healthy, I'll be doing him a favor. That's how a coral sees it. I'm doing him a favor. I'm answering someone that literally is a complete waste of my energy. So obviously this is the extreme version of it. This is not how I feel consciously. It's the subconscious way of worldview of the coral. And I'm picking it up and extrapolating it, expanding it, putting a microscope on it to see, that's what's the root of it. I just don't want to interact with people that are kind of still lower down in drives that are not my drives. So that's really what it comes down to. So so he'll be picking up on their energy and their vibes and their focuses, and it'll be absorbed too much. And that absorption, he just can't handle it. Now, if you look at turquoise is so still that he's patient enough to tolerate lower stages and to help bring them up. That there's less likely a chance that a lower stage will bother them. So turquoise actually is what many people think is the last stage. You've reached enlightenment. You reach a state of peace if you're healthy, and you say all the stages are perfect. But after a while of turquoise, it's possible that they might get frustrated, and that frustration will manifest as a new stage, a stage of implementation, of change. But that change, you'll want to change in a way that you go unseen. So then your turquoise groups that you had will look different. After a while, it might be hard to hide that you're turquoise. Like, you may continue doing what you're doing, but outside of that, you're more interested in changing systems than just giving a nice spiritual speech that's gonna get people thinking about deep ideas and political systems, but not immediately getting you to action. It's like Sadhguru is stage turquoise, easy. That's why people in stage orange will not like Sadhguru. No, green. People in stage green won't like Sadhguru, I noticed. Very easily. It depends, because there's a separation in culture. Because Sadhguru is surrounded by stage blue people in stage orange. So his belief systems are affected. So his worldview and the way he expresses ideas and spiritual teachings get affected that way. But green looks at him and they just see blue. They see dogma, which bothers them. But a lot of his stuff, even though it's dogma, first of all, who cares that it's dogma? Coral has psychic abilities. So Coral already knows that dogma is true. They already know that there's truth to it. Why do you have to demonize it? You just have to frame it in a different way, so it's no longer so materialistic, it's no longer myopic. You expand yourself. But a green thinks psychic abilities is just part of the spiritual stuff. So the moment they recognize psychic abilities as true, they're going to have to enter into yellow and turquoise, because they notice that consciousness is one, and they have to notice that that there's deeper things in this world that I have to look into. So the unhealthy green will demonize psychic. Any spiritual will demonize spiritual stuff that sounds too airy-fairy, and the healthy one will be open-minded to it and realize that they have to grow to understand this. That's the divide in stage green. Okay, so stage coral will isolate themselves in terms of who they speak to. They'll be selective with who they speak to. They won't want to respond to orange. It's a waste of their time. So the big question is, let's say you've maximized efficiency with convincing orange to grow. That's your occupation. So based on this idea, you might actually stay in turquoise indefinitely, because you've built a system that's comfortable with creating a holism ideology. And so therefore you'll master the ability to do that. It's not important to advance. Once you reach teal, you realize it's not important to advance the coral. it could be helpful if you want to see the world from two different angles. See the world from stillness versus disorder, and you're just getting the taste of both worlds. And Teal kind of realizes that, and then they're both an important way of changing the world. They're both an important way of understanding the world. It's just two experiences that everyone should have, but it's not urgent to have it. Right, so a turquoise will probably stay indefinitely there because he has a system built around it. But I say that if enough people advance, the whole world is going to advance with it. So there'll be a trickling effect and a slug movement right through the spiral that will eventually take even the most integrated turquoise up the spiral. A matter of years, a matter of it depends. Every person's gonna be different, and also the landscape is gonna his own personal landscape and society will affect how he develops and so on. So I used to think that empathy had to do with some sensitive person who takes people seriously. Like I have a teacher for years, he told me that a sensitive person, the rabbinic writings teach that a sensitive person does not live a comfortable life. So so it could be that so there's two types of sensitive people. There's a sensitive person who everything bothers them because of trauma and upbringing or something like that, maybe even genetic baggage. And there's a sensitive person who's sensitive to information. He takes it in, and as a result he wants to filter it. He only wants the important information. And I wonder if the people who are taking in all the information, if they have an easier time entering into things like coral, because their mind is already chaotic. It's a recipe for chaos. Everything is like a trigger to what the hell does that entail? What is the bigger picture in that idea here? So that's actually a quality of yellow because it has to do with thinking. You have a tendency to be in yellow, but the sensitivity aspect of a coral, that when he or she is taking in ideas, of a coral, when he or she is taking in ideas, chaotic things, or responding in a chaotic way, will that lead the person into coral? And I think it does. I think they have characteristics that are profitable or beneficial to move faster, and that is as an innate quality. That when you're sensitive, in the sense that you have to be careful with how you interact with people because you know that their energy is transferring into you. That's part of coral. And it's not about, people make a mistake. I've been watching another teacher teach spiral dynamics. He believes that you will descend the spiral. No, you don't descend the spiral. You just adopt unhealthy versions of your own spiral. That, and you may be concentrating your lower stages that are remaining from the mountain here, because both sides are less on the front. You're going to be falling into the lower stages, but his implication is you can fall there indefinitely and perhaps go lower and lower. No. You'll always bounce back like a rubber band. It could be the reason is because your surroundings and society follow something different. So therefore, that is a false teaching in the sense that regression is indefinite. Regression is like, so what he may have been trying to say, because there is a language barrier going on, is you may adopt more of the motivations you had in the previous stage, but that doesn't mean you'll fall back. It just means that you're not activating those other parts. And he did say something that can indicate that that's what he believed. But so this essentially is saying that a coral person is both psychic and empathic. And the question is, if a person is an empath, does he mean he's in coral? No, it could just mean you're in turquoise and you're a sensitive person. But what I argue is that anyone who has these qualities will transfer up the spiral faster, because these are inequalities of the higher stages. So they'll trickle or transfer up the spiral. And as a reminder, trickle means parts of you will be activating or entering into other stages, and the majority will remain. But the majority, those parts of you that only enter, the trickling, only happens because you're being rushed by certain personality traits, certain abilities that you were born with. And I think Ken Wilber would agree that people are born with being prone to different stages. Like, it's very possible I was born to be coral. I remember when I was 4 years old, everything was fuzzy. Everything was chaotic. Like, I couldn't walk around without feeling like I was high, because the whole universe was like filled with everything. Chances are, at a young age, I had it because I was absorbing the world, so my brain went on overload and started seeing fuzzy. And that never happened again. It was like it was a phase that I went through, but I think it had to do with the way my mind was processing. And at night, I had to like ask my mom, "What's all these things moving to the right? Like everything has like squares and shapes moving, and like this, like everything was like a computerized screen." And I said, "Oh, I used to get that too. Don't worry about that. It's nothing." But the chaotic world I was kind of born with. I always had it. I mentioned someone on a Facebook post that he says he believes he has ADHD. I told him ADHD is probably a symptom of doing this and that and having to do this and getting this amount of information, checking this, and you're moving at such a fast pace and no one can keep up with you. That is actually a quality, a trait of stage coral, and he was confused with himself, but I had to throw out there that and this guy, he's one of the most he says the most deep ideas, and he's very honest about his emotions, and clearly there's a lot of emotion underneath, but the way he articulates is so coherent, and so I feel like I'm reading through like Braille, like I'm moving my fingers and everything is just so smooth. I don't understand Braille, but everything just makes sense, you know. And that's the way he speaks. He speaks like everything is planned out. Everything is like clay, like moving your finger across the clay. Like it harmonizes. It's coherent. It's like God Himself writes his words, His mundane words. So I was basically saying the fact that this is happening, especially considering the fact that look how he speaks. It's clearly a stage turquoise. The fact that you're developing this symptom is a sign that you're moving into coral. And he doesn't realize how advanced he is. He doesn't realize his stage. It takes someone objective to be able to see it. So Teal Swan, hopefully my video does not get shut down because this is controversial, because I'm supposed to be on par with Teal Swan, right? But Teal Swan is in stages turquoise, coral, and teal. Now you might think that her name is actually teal, but she's more like 20% to 30% teal, because she has a philosophy that you have to take people as a part of yourself. So clearly she understands that we're all each other. She's had hundreds of mystical experiences that cannot be numbered, and she has psychic abilities that obviously activate at will, you know. So there's she's a lot of in the higher stages, but she's focused on her business, orange. So I made an argument recently that because she's focused on business, no, you cannot exit out of orange ever, unless either you go broke or you no longer care about growing your business. But someone in marketing is pulled in. So Leo Gura recently started buying plants in his house, and I said to myself, you know, I saw someone mention that, and I said to myself, this guy's buying plants because his orange is leaving him. And why is his orange leaving him? Because he spent literally a whole year getting 60,000 subscribers. That's it. Many people with such a business would get 100,000. So his ego, his identity, and his focus surrounding building his business dwindled and dwindled over the year. And when it came to and he put up a Patreon. Then he started debating, maybe I don't need a Patreon. Do I need that much money? And now that he bought a house, I think that now that he feels satisfied, like, okay, I got my house, I fulfill my dream, let's make it nice or whatever. But how is he making it nice? With green plants. And I said to myself that really what's going on here is all the realization that money's not important by not getting what he quote unquote wanted materially, it forced him into the higher stages. So I think Teal Swan is going through that, where the remnant of her orange of not being able to grow her business during this pandemic is exiting out, and that's a painful process for Orange. So she's not Orange at all, but there are remnants of it that are transferring out. So when people get upset at her and think that her teachings are this and that, that might have to do with the sentiment of fear, that she's afraid that her business may go. So that's the transition, and once that goes away, you'll see that Teal Swan will be a completely a person that is beyond Teal and beyond our understanding. But the remainder has to first exit out, because that's the Orange is the Coral understands that the Orange is the enemy of progress. But the thing is that according to this theory, Coral, who is in business and has a business, they will probably not exit out of Coral, because the business will sustain their occupation. Whatever agendas and belief patterns and action patterns were created will be pushed away, will be less focused on as a result. Why? Because they have a system, they have business, and that will sustain the stage, because they can't advance unless the Orange completely gets eradicated. Now, I desire money, I buy materialistic things all the time in my house. I do it for my family, because they're in lower stages, and I want them to transfer into Orange. I also understand that psychologically I feel better. I also have belief systems that a nicer house allows for your brain. So you might say the brain will appreciate nicer things because of luxury, which leads to success and prosperity, so therefore you're an Orange. It could be microscopic points of Orange. I don't know. It could be. But I'd venture to say it has less to do with Orange and more to do with basic necessities, so I don't fall into Orange. I mean, you need the lower stages, even in fractions, to place sate. It's as if each stage has its own ego, to place sate that ego, and then you can have most of your ego and most of your consciousness in higher focuses. So the goal of this video was to pinpoint the specific idea about he's so chaotic because he's absorbing people's energy, so he will isolate himself and being very selective with who he interacts with. And he won't choose to interact so much with Turquoise, not because he doesn't agree with him, but because he's past Turquoise. It's like, I understand it already. He's already grown up. I don't need to make him grow. Let's focus on someone else. So he's focused on Orange, but he can't interact with Orange. So instead of interacting directly with Orange, he'll tell people to he'll try to change the systems, and so he may interact with Orange if it's for the sake of manipulation, because then it's superficial, which teaches you another idea. That when the ego feels that it has a reason other than the reason that people think, it allows it. And the reason for that is because of trickery. Because with trickery, the ego's responses in the human psyche is that even if people think, they'll eventually, I know it's not true, and they'll eventually know the truth. They'll eventually know that I'm not doing it for that, and they can't point fingers because there's always the alternate, even if there's one small negative. And so that's why you have someone who fixes someone's car who's so selfish, because to the public at large, they'll believe that he's doing it for money, or he's doing it so he can go to his house and get a free meal. So that's why an ego may allow it, and the ego still is existing in higher stages. It's just much less, with much less impact. But I think the operating systems are pretty consistent to some extent. And once you get into Teal and higher, I don't know if the ego functions the same way. It could be that the ego moves up in lower stages, or it could also be that the ego ceases to exist as we know it. It may end up being so high up that it may be confused with just a higher stage itself. And its main priorities would be the higher stages, holism and collectivity, and let's get getting people together to discuss spirituality and consciousness and deeper thinking. AI is probably part of Coral, part of Turquoise. People don't realize. Like what's his name, Lex? He talks about AI a lot. So he's interested in truth. So you may think he's in yellow because he's interested in but he's also interested in holism, because AI has a lot to do with the computer age, and where the computer age is going, and also where consciousness is going. We may end up being in computers. We may end up being a computer ourselves. We may end up being either computers can be based on us, or we are based on a computer. Like, there are all these different ideas that it's a combination. The discussion is in yellow, but the holistic, but knowing that there is, but seeing it from a bigger picture, that we could either be one of these things, or we can either create an AI that's like a person with advancements, and how that's where the world is headed. Though that kind of thinking is turquoise. And then people in New Age believe that because everything's digital, the more AI you're thinking like, the more coral you're in, because coral utilizes the landscape even more than turquoise did, and they see the urgency of it, so they're encouraged to do it. All right, that covers a ton of ideas. I hope you enjoyed, and have a great day.